Jackson-Bey have their first date. A 6% tariff was imposed to help offset the lost income of Tarkalian sheep herders. And Chief says Worf is riding the men a bit hard. Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We are joined by two very special guests, Mr. David Mack and Mr. John Ordover. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are reviewing Deep Space Nine Season 4, Episode 7, Starship Down, directed by Alexander Singer, written by, what a coincidence, David Mack and John J. Ordover. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Good so far.
So far, it's like, we'll see what happens. I'm watching you.
Wait a minute. I had this episode directed by Alexander Sadig, and I may be wrong. So Singer. All right. So there's my first mistake of the day.
He's stuck in a turbo lift with Jadzia, so he's like, I wanna direct this one. No, but it's Singer, yeah.
I talked.
We need 4 or 5 more takes on this one.
I talked.
Yeah, exactly.
I talked to Sid about the episode, and he said, "What will always be one of my faves because I got to spend the day after day cuddling with Terry Farrell in a turbo lift."
Yeah.
And that is a very good way to spend a work day.
Was it a turbo lift? That's just what I put, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
well,
they were
an
stuck.
elevator of some kind that was stuck.
It was a Defiant turbo lift.
Cool.
There's 2, starboard and port. They're located just forward of the transporter room.
Wow.
Should you need to get to one in a hurry.
Excellent knowledge. So, David and John, this is really cool. This is a real pleasure. We really appreciate you guys being flexible with your schedule. We had to kind of shuffle a couple things, and you guys were really great about it. You guys, you not only pitched this, I'm assuming, but you actually wrote the script, and that was something I wasn't aware that they would do. I mean,
we wrote a script.
We wrote a script, and then, of course, it goes through multiple revision after revision.
Sure.
Renee Echevarria, I believe, took it through 5 drafts internally.
Yeah, they took it through a bunch of drafts internally. But I got to tell you, it's been a very long time since I've watched the episode, probably 20 years, or at least, to be honest, watched it past the point where my name pops up on the screen. Okay, well, that was fun. See, told you guys. Quick. We were kind of surprised, too. They liked our spec script.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too deep into this, because we want to know about that, but just so everybody at home knows, John and David are also credited with one other Deep Space Nine script that they wrote, and it's one that we've mentioned at least 20 times on this show, Cirroc. It's Only a Paper Moon.
We actually have the story credit for Paper Moon. Ron Moore was the teleplay writer.
Right.
I have a very, if you don't mind the segue, I have a very funny story about my conversation with Ron Moore about nailing down the story. Is that
Absolutely.
Are you rigidly locked in?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Sitting in my office, I get a call from Ron, and we had pitched that story 3 years earlier.
Wow.
And it had gone through many permutations, and he called up, and he said, "Okay, we're buying the story." And I'm going, "Great." And I said, and we were completely new at that point, so I said, "As I understand it, you will now tell me the story. I will type it up, and then I will send it into you, and you will send us money." And he said, "Yes, that's exactly how it works." So he's telling me the story, and it's a lot of the original elements, a lot of the whole idea of one set stayed in, and I'm typing it all up, and it's a great story for those who might not know. Nog has come back from having had his leg blown off, and they've replaced it, but he's having like serious PTSD issues. So he goes
phantom
into the holodeck.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into the holodeck and won't come out. And I'm getting through this whole thing, and then Ron said, and I'm writing it down, and it's very different from our original story, but nothing we would object to at all. And I'm typing it up, and we get to the end. He said, and Ron says, and that's the point where we find out why Nog won't come out of the holodeck. And I said, okay. why won't now come out of the holodeck? And he said, how the heck would I know, John? It's your story. And I was like, okay. And then I pitched something really fast, and that's what they went with. So that's my fun story. But that's like, yeah. How would I?
And then when I was doing the draft of the new story document, because I was the draftsman back then, John would be the editor, and I would do the draft work. I sort of drew on some of my experience. I had been badly injured in a car accident when I was 21. So I sort of had that notion of having your youthful illusion of immortality shattered. And so I tried to put some of that into the story. And surprisingly, more of our actual words that we put on paper showed up on screen in Paper Moon, for which we have only story credit, than show up in Starship Down, where we have the written by credit. And it's just one of those funny things about how TV works and how the revision process works. And,
But we were very happy with how everything turned out.
Oh, very.
Which is the only really important thing with the art thing. Basically, if you don't want a collaborative process, don't work in TV.
Right.
Yeah. That's just basically it. You can't take.
If you're precious about your words, it's the wrong medium.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And I would say to Dave, Dave, and I would say, Dave, did the check clear? And then everything's perfect.
25 years later, I have sort of come out on the other side of that. Now I understand it's a purely mercenary situation.
Yeah.
I take the money, I deliver the manuscript. What happens after that? Maybe I have some input, maybe I don't. I just think about what I buy with the check.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have complete creative control of how we spend the money.
Right. I have complete creative control over how often I pay my landlord. Apparently, I do it once per month.
Yeah.
Were you guys?
I just got a residual check for
$36. It was
$36.
fabulous.
Yeah, for $36.
Wow.
So all these years later,
Free money, baby.
Paying off.
Speaking of paying rent, right? That should do it.
That'll do it.
What were you saying, Cirroc? Sorry.
No, I was curious to know what the phone call was like. Was it 3 years later that you got the call, or was this a constant process?
It's only a Paper Moon that the call was 3 years later.
There was no intervening communication about it. We pitched it in 95. They bought it in 98. But between when we pitched it and they said, we like that, but we're not sure what to do with it, we'll get back to you. Well, we heard nothing. And then suddenly 3 years later, we heard, we're buying it.
And I had this obnoxious thing I would do with Dave. Whenever we sold something, I would call him up and I would say, Dave, I'm afraid I have some bad news. And he would say, oh, God, what the fuck happened now? Sorry, what the beep happened now? And I'd say, well, we just sold another story treatment. And he said, your definition of bad news is really weird. Well, with more profanity. But yeah, it just comes out of the blue. It just came out. We just forgotten it and moved on with our lives.
We'll have to come back when you guys actually get to that episode someday in the future. We can tell you more about how it originally began, what the original pitch was, all that sort of stuff. But obviously that takes us far off the beam from Starship Down, which is what brings us here today.
That was a really big episode, really important one.
Yeah.
The episode, but sticking with Starship Down, what happened with Starship Down was I'm driving home on a crowded highway, talking on my cell phone, which I should not have been, to Dave.
I thought we were in the car together.
Nope, you were home. It was a phone thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember being in the car.
You don't have to remember shit. Sorry, we're old. We're old. We don't have to remember things.
See, I'm pretty sure we were together in your car going somewhere on the BQE.
Well, let's see if we agree. Okay, then I'm going to tell the next part, and we'll see if we agree on that.
Probably not.
Dave said to me, I really wish there was some way we could do Das Boot as a
I said, I want to sink the Defiant.
Right, and he said...
And he said, okay, I'm going to need a little more context.
A little more context. And
I said, well, last night I watched Das Boot, and I would love to do an episode of Trek that feels like Das Boot, which is a German submarine film produced back in the 80s. I really love that movie because I was a film school nerd, and I love submarine warfare stories just in general.
I just wish there was some way to do it for Star Trek? And I said, there is.
And so we started talking it out.
Yeah, we just started talking it out. Then they bought it. They bought it actually pretty quickly. And what Iris said was...
They bought it right off the verbal pitch over the phone.
Yeah, he said,
wow.
You know, and we didn't mention that it was based on a movie because you just don't do that.
Right, you don't tell them your
You
inspiration.
don't tell them where you got the idea. And Iris says, you know, I've been looking for a way to do Das Boot on Deep Space Nine.
Wow, isn't that convenient?
David, do you remember it that way too?
Vaguely.
I did the phone calls with.
I was on the other line though. I remember you had me in the cubicle outside, and we did I wasn't allowed to talk, but I was like monitoring the call.
And
so there was a phone involved somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, that was the pitch session. That happened in February, March of '95.
Right.
Okay.
And they later came back to us and said, how would you feel about it being the atmosphere of a gas giant instead of water? Because it turns out water is too expensive. And
Smart.
We said, actually, that idea is a lot cooler.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more science fiction-y.
Yeah.
Although I felt we'd had a lot of stuff in the pitch about weird CGI fish and stuff like that coming by on the view screen that we thought would be really funny. And that all got lost. But it doesn't matter. It was cooler. It was a much better science fiction idea. And affordable, which was the...
Yeah, because it came down to just billowing vapor through the corridors. Of course, I found out later, while researching a Star Trek novel, that in a gas giant atmosphere, the pressure on the gas is so great that it actually becomes a superheated liquid metal, which would have been far deadlier and, again, extremely difficult to animate and very expensive to produce. So
nobody tell Dave that going faster than light is impossible.
Theoretically, it's possible. It's just generating enough energy to fold space in the Alcubierre drive model is currently prohibitive.
Suddenly, you guys are reminding me of that too. Those two engineers in the engineering room talking all the nerd talk. Yeah, they were great.
One of the odd, minor, but unique things to happen with Starship Down is that Starship Down is actually the name that was on the pitch.
Yeah.
And it made it through all...
they actually pluralized it to Starships Down because originally it was Defiant and Karma Ship, and they thought it made more sense to pluralize it. But at the last minute, they pulled back and went back to my original pitch.
I'm glad you mentioned that because on CBS All Access, it's called Starships Down, pluralized, but on IMDb and everywhere else I'd seen it, it was singular.
Well, it's probably because they drew it off of an early draft script or an early production order.
Or because they're really sloppy. Not that I would say that.
No.
Again.
But, in fact, all the streaming services, though I won't get into it, are extremely sloppy with their write-ups. They
have spoilers galore.
They only have 25 words. By the way, you'll notice how I said I really shouldn't go off on this, and I did anyway. That's a hallmark. They only have 25 words, and they use the 25 words for half the movies are the same. This is a movie about a young girl who... And it's no, if you only have 25 words, start with the point. But anyway...
blurb copies.
I'm momentarily out of words. Go on.
Well, I did want to bring something up that I first watched Deep Space Nine many, many years ago.
Us too.
And this was one of the first episodes I really remember seeing. I kind of joined in later on, and this was the one that left the strongest imagery in my young mind at the time, because when I look back at my years of watching Deep Space Nine, before this rewatch that Cirroc and I are having, many of the moments and the images that I remember of Deep Space Nine are in that episode. Probably top 5 to 10 most memorable moments in any series for me personally. Cool. The moments with the scenes, the imagery of these two behind me, Quark and Hanok, that was very memorable. The scene with Jadzia and Bashir also stuck in my mind. and the stuff with Kira praying and telling stories and demanding that Sisko stay alive. Those three plots or sub stories just have always stayed in my mind as some of the most memorable imprints.
Well, what sticks in my mind is the photon torpedo in the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
got copied in season 2 of the Discovery.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He ripped off our gag.
Well, yes, but
not that you would ever say that.
It was an homage.
It was an homage. We'll call it an homage.
A reference. Yeah.
Actually, I think one of my favorite images is one that John came up with. He mentioned it to them during the pitch session, or maybe during the break session when we were breaking the episode. And he said, whatever else we do, we should end the episode on a shot of Sisko smiling the way we always used to end on the upbeat shot of Kirk smiling at the end of an original series episode. And it's not something they really ever did. It was a very somber, very serious show. This is one of the rare examples of an episode of DS9 that ends with a smile on Sisko's face.
Right. And a big, beautiful smile with Kira with the hat on her.
With the hat.
It was adorable. I loved it.
It was a peculiar, an unusually upbeat moment of ending for that series.
Right.
And of course, we got in our absolutely favorite line.
How long? 20 minutes. You've got 10.
You've got 10.
You've got 10,
which is a standard Star Trek line that they, for some reason, hadn't used in all of TNG. TNG had this odd habit of saying, we must solve this problem or this planet will be destroyed in 3 days.
Well, you have the whole episode to...
Yeah. And so you're saying this is not, in fact, a particularly tense situation. You have plenty of time to solve it. I'm going to get it.
Unless you're living on the planet, in which case 3 days may not seem like a lot of time.
No, I understand.
I can't even pack up my apartment in 3 days.
Well, true. But
I still remember, though, the reaction we got from Hans.
Is that more of a you problem, Dave?
That's just sort of... I remember when we turned in the script.
That hadn't been used before? That you've only got 10 minutes? How long will it take? 20 minutes. You've only got 10.
That was used constantly on the original series.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But somehow it skipped over TNG, so we brought it back to DS9.
Yeah.
I like that.
My favorite reaction, though, let's see, there were two. I think they were both from Hans Beimler. Once he commented that they loved our first draft teleplay, and if they'd had a spare $100 million sitting around, they would have produced it. But they didn't, so rewrites were required. Yeah. And the second was something that was only said to me and John relayed it to me. John turned in the script. I guess we FedExed it or whatever back in those days. You actually had to turn in a physical document. And Hans's reaction when he confirmed receipt of the script was, I'm so glad the script is here. Now the writing can begin.
Yeah.
And I swear it was like a knife to the heart. Now the writing can begin. We've been drafting this thing for 2 weeks, thinking about it for months. Now the writing can begin.
Right. But as a longtime editor, I'm much more comfortable with the rewriting process than Dave was at the time.
Yeah, I've since adapted to that. 36 novels later, I
am going to start what Hans said in the break session, and you can finish it. Okay? If this is a consular ship,
where is the ambassador? Hans basically set up the line. He was doing a back and forth with Ira, and one of us jumped in with that line, and Ira said, "Freaks! I'm surrounded by freaks." And Hans said, "It's your fault, Ira. You hired
us all." Yeah. Was it Hans who threw a tribble at me?
Possibly. I think it was either him or Robert Hewitt Wolf. Yeah. I remember when we showed up, we were waiting because Ira was late. Right. He came in on crutches, I think with his leg in a cast, and he was grumbling. I'm not going to say about who. I'm not going to drop this name, but there was somebody within the Trek family who he was grumbling quite angrily about. And I heard this as he was coming in past me, and he was wearing his Leon, the professional mirror sunglasses, his trademark sunglasses. Right. I said, well, Ira, if you decide to kill him, I'll be happy to drive the Bronco for you. Hi, Dave Mack.
Zip.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice.
Wow. So also, there was something, I mean, first of all, I found this to be much more of a bottle episode than I remembered it being when we watched it during because I remember it being like again, so memorable and epic, and there's so many great moments and all this stuff going on. But then when I watched it, I was like, wow, this is a really easy thing. That's probably what they loved about it on top of the story, was that they could you just get these tiny little sets, a little nook for Jadzia to snuggle in, and a little floor area for Sisko and Kira. It was beautiful. It was perfect.
Halfway through the break session, Han said, hey, this is a bottle show.
Yeah.
Duh.
A bottle show. And I said, yeah, we pitched it as a bottle show because we figure the cheaper we can make it, the more likely you are to buy it from us, because
then you save money for your episodes that you do later.
Spend it on a big special effects thing that you want to do.
And that's how Paper Moon got sold as well. Originally it got sold as a bottle pitch. I know we're jumping ahead to the wrong episode here. Originally it was all supposed to happen in Quark's Bar. We pitched them essentially an episode of Cheers redesigned for Star Trek. A whole episode, all 43 minutes on one set, with everybody coming and going from one set. So you'd only have to light one set for the week.
How much it costs just to light one set for a day. And we said, if we keep this to one set, we'll save them a hell of a lot of money. So we
light one set for the week.
Let's keep the sets to an absolute minimum.
No new sets, no new construction.
If we'd done in a story that didn't get produced that we sold to Voyager too, that one was just everything in sickbay. Just like
episode of MASH.
And if there was advice I would give to everyone who wants to pitch TV, not that we're the world's most successful TV pitchers, it's this. It's not a small movie. It is a filmed stage play. So if you don't have to build a set, they were much more likely to buy an outside pitch.
Of course, that was back in the 90s. Really, TV doesn't work like that anymore. It's all closed rooms, shorter seasons, higher per episode budgets.
And CGI
they really don't let freelancers like us pitch anymore.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to take our break in just a minute here. I do want to talk about where it looks like they did put in a couple extra bucks. Was with 4 guest stars or guest actors, maybe 1 guest star and 3 guest actors, which was different than what we usually see in Deep Space Nine. We kind of got to see a few extra crewmen, which I thought was great. But we'll take a super quick break, and we'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton. As you know, we are joined by David Mack and John J. Ordover. Do you go by John J. or just John?
I just go by John.
Okay.
I just go by John.
Although in professional writing credits, he is John J.
Right. To
Because
separate myself from no one else on the face of the planet named John Ordover.
Yeah, right. So at the beginning of every second segment, we go over the trivioids that didn't make the cutting room floor, may or may not have, the 3 at the very beginning that I said. We go over the options that we had to choose from. There was a 6% tariff was imposed to help offset the lost income of Tarkalian sheep herders. Worf wants response times reduced by 15%. Today is Hamara, the anniversary of the emissary's arrival. That's a good point. That's a good thing right there. Quark and Hanok become besties in the Defiant Mess Hall. Jadzia and Bashir's first date is in a turbo lift. Jadzia takes a few lungfuls of fluorine, although Bashir called it fluorine, I don't remember. Fluorine is what it's called. Kira does her best Captain Jellico impression. I wanted to use that one. Damn it. Kira does her best Captain Jellico impression. Kira tells the story of the 3 brothers who go to Jakala. Chief says Worf is riding the men a bit hard. We handled that one just fine. Hannock wants to talk to Quark about those Boolean currency fluctuations. And lastly, Morn has 17 brothers and sisters. Everybody at home, please be sure you are subscribing and going over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/the7th-rule. Please make sure you subscribe to this channel, like, comment, join in the fun, and in the comments, let us know very quickly what I meant by Kira is doing her best Jellico impression, because David's smiling, so I think he might know. Do you know what? Say. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I actually don't know. I find the notion of her as Jellico funny.
Well, it's because she suggested to Sisko that they
the rotation to 4-shift.
Got it. That they go to a 4-shift rotation, which is a very Jellico thing to say. Cirroc, if you ever see Chain of Command?
Yeah, Chain of Command
Parts 1 and 2, you'll see Edward Jellico, the greatest captain in the history of Star Trek. But he's
actually greatly underrated. He wasn't a bad captain. He just got a bad rap because he was trying to follow Picard into running the Enterprise, and he just had a very different style. He's not, your buddy-friendly Picard. And Picard
got everything done
when he first got there.
In my head canon, he wound up hooking up with Dr. Pulaski.
In the books, actually, Jellico winds up the admiral in charge of Starfleet. Yeah, he winds up the CNC. He works his way up the ladder.
Wow, that's awesome.
But I was figured, why not put the two characters the fans hated most and have them have a romance? But in any case,
I'm not touching that one because there are a couple others I could name. But
yeah.
Actually, speaking of characters who didn't make the cut,
I've heard that from a lot of women.
Speaking of characters who didn't make the cut, early in the development process, when we were doing the break session, the writers kept trying to get us to add in a character named Tyler, who was going to be this new command officer who they had apparently had big plans for. And John and I were confused. We were saying, we've recently added Worf to the cast. Don't we think we really ought to spend more screen time with Worf? They said, no, we have big plans for Tyler. So we blocked out all these scenes with Tyler, and Tyler was in our first draft. By the time they finished 5 rewrites and got the thing in front of the camera, Tyler was gone. Tyler was excised, and they never mentioned Tyler on the show ever.
I've got a guess about that, and I feel pretty confident with this one. I think that whatever they were planning to do with this Tyler character, whatever seed they were going to plant there, I think that they replaced it with Eddington's storyline. Now, Cirroc doesn't know because this is his first watch through, so this is very exciting. So every week I ask him about how he feels about Michael Eddington.
Yeah, I had to watch it in order and sit down and actually take time to appreciate the show. And
I suppose for you, it's kind of like watching home movies of when you were a kid. So it's like some part of it's got, oh God, did I look like that?
It's kind of a little bit like that. You have to, that's pretty accurate. I'm also getting to see people in a different light, so I get to see them for their abilities, their acting abilities, and the characters that they played, as opposed to the people that they are. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty amazing.
Cool.
So one thing I did want to say really quickly, though, I want to shoot this one in there. I noticed a real balance about the characters. So it wasn't really just about Sisko and Kira having that relationship in which they discussed how uncomfortable Kira is around Sisko because she looks at him as a religious figure, which I don't think was discussed before this point. But I also feel a balance. I felt a balance with Bashir and Dex, as well as with Quark and this
Hannock.
Yeah. So that was interesting to me. Which one of these storylines was the main driving force for your ingenuity?
Well, in general, the idea is that if you're going to use only the standing sets and make a bubble show, one of the best dramatic approaches to it is to basically pair people off and lock them in rooms. Mm-hmm. And it's as subtle or as unsubtle as you want to make it.
We originally thought of Hannock as a female character, and there was supposed to be sort of a semi-romantic thing going on eventually between Hannock and Quark. But later they revised it, made it a male character, and they got the amazing James Cromwell.
Wanted to talk about him too. He's amazing.
And that was a brilliant revision on their part.
And that was before First Contact, right?
Yeah, I believe so. First Contact was 98.
Yeah. When you guys get to our age, you'll understand how things
swirl around. Hannock, is that a name that you came up with?
Yeah, that was.
Well, that's his last name. His first name was Banana. But anyway.
No, sorry, David. We'll edit this out.
I gotta compliment you, Ryan, because ordinarily only things I say make Dave do that.
That was a Picard facepalm he just nailed too for us. He just nailed that. A+.
So what have you guys been doing since DS9? I guess that's my
brilliant question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, why don't you go first?
Well, until 2000, from 92 to 2003, I was the editor of the Star Trek novel. One of them. Then I moved on to running a small science fiction publisher myself. And then my son was diagnosed with autism, and I realized the amount of money I could make doing this was not going to be enough to take care of his needs. So I switched to creative consulting, marketing consulting, idea generating, basically which of these two marketing campaigns is the best, because you don't work for our company, so you must be smarter than we are. The whole thing, or come in and look at it. And I will start. I'll just jump to the ending. This is my killer thing that I was paid a ridiculous amount of money for. It was a couple of years ago. I was called in to see which of two marketing campaigns to launch a new sandwich, which is as much as I can mention, were better. And I looked at them and said, look, these will both work fine. You have a budget of what, 30 million for promotions? These are all worth fine, but there's nothing exciting or that will stand out on this. Or you can let me send out one tweet to one address from your company account today, and it will get you 10 times the publicity and will be free, except I get 3% of what you were going to spend on the original publicity thing. And they said, fine. I said, and look, you weren't going to launch this till the fall. I can do this now. I do this now, and and if it doesn't work, you've lost nothing, and you can still do whatever it was in the fall. It worked. It worked so well that people were fighting over the product, and police had to be called. This
we all know what it was.
Track it down, but please don't, or at least don't tell anyone.
Right.
And we won't say anything, but we kind of got an idea of what you're talking about.
I think we've caught up.
I wasn't able to pick it up.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you after we're done.
When we're off the air.
All right. Okay.
But it's a sandwich.
It's a sandwich.
Say no more. Say no more.
So it was for the benefit of the universe. It was a sandwich that has been of great benefit to the universe. What can I say?
And benefit to you. I mean,
yeah,
that was
and benefit to me.
Apparently, yeah.
And they did pay me, but they had to break it up into 6 different quarters because it was too large a payment for them to pay all in one quarter.
Nice problem to have.
Nice problem to have.
Yeah.
And another example of what I do is, and this one I can talk about because the guy said, I'm not going to put an NDA on you for this one because it's too stupid. I called a friend of mine who runs a company that develops VR headset games.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I have had dozens of friends who would do nothing but complain about their commute, who are now complaining to me that they've realized their commute to and from work was the only private time they had, and they miss it.
Mm.
So I am pitching you the game Commute, in which you sit on your sofa, put on your virtual headset, get in a car, and drive to work, and that's basically it. There's impediments. You're trying to get to work on time. That's the whole game. You can throw as much as you want into it or not. You have to drive by monsters. It could be just that a red light doesn't change to green, and you have to figure out what to do. And he said, John, this is probably the stupidest idea you ever pitched me.
Yeah.
And I go, yes, I would agree. But let me point out that every car company, every GPS company, every music providing company, Spotify or whatever, they are all going to want the option of using their car, their GPS, their music, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So you can cover all these production costs
with licensing. You
can cover all for just product placement. You can cover all the production costs before you even tell your developers to start on it.
Interesting.
And he said, basically, John, I don't believe you can do this. You did this to me again. But this idea is incredibly stupid, but it is so stupid that some other company might make $1 billion on it, and I'll feel like an idiot. So I'm going to buy it.
Totally.
Now, I haven't seen it. It hasn't come out. I don't think it will, but I got a nice check.
Yeah.
There you go.
And the other thing I've been doing, because I really love to talk about me, is I was segueing into doing comedy writing, stand-up comedy, and I had off-Broadway sketches produced, and was doing script doctoring on off-Broadway stuff, adding the humor bits that they couldn't get in, stuff of that nature. And then, of course, there was a pandemic. So I'm basically sitting at home, not doing any of that stuff.
Okay.
And all my creative consultant clients have the same question. How do I sell things to people who have no money?
Yeah.
And I say,
Yeah.
you're going to have to move. I'm out. So, and
We've got a couple ideas there.
Yeah.
But Dave, you have a couple pretty impressive credits that just popped up recently on IMDb as well, by the way.
A few. Since John and I were doing the TV pitch thing back in the 90s, we pitched a couple hundred ideas over the course of 3 or 4 years. Around the year 2000, I started making a transition career-wise. Part of what motivated that was I had a near-death experience. I suffered a really bad stomach hemorrhage. John was there. He'll tell you I nearly died. Spent a week in the hospital. And I got out, and I sort of had a renewed perspective.
Out his apartment. I'm trying to get him out the door to an ambulance, and he stops to tidy up his magazines.
I'm a very tidy, organized individual, but that's beside the point now.
Okay.
And anyway, he wasn't actually waiting for an ambulance. You drove me to the hospital.
Right.
Anyway, so I get out of the hospital with this sort of renewed sense of, okay, I got to get on with my life. TV is not panning out. I can't afford to go to LA. I've been sort of, John has been telling me for years that I've, got the chops that I should try to take a shot at writing for the books. And then an opportunity came my way and got a foot in the door doing something called the Starfleet Survival Guide. That led to me pitching ebooks. That led to me pitching novels. And over the course of about 3 or 4 years, I made a career transition.
Him kicking and screaming into prose.
Right. And at the same time I was doing that, I had changed from sort of an underpaid job at a food service news magazine. I got a job as the editor of sci-fi.com, the official website of the Sci-Fi Channel, starting in May of 2000. And I worked for the Sci-Fi Channel for 8 years. And part of what eventually led me to resign from Sci-Fi in 2008 was that my novel writing career sort of accelerated very quickly to the point where I'd written about 10 novels in 8 years. And I suddenly realized, if I had more time, I could put a little more energy into this. So I resigned in 2008 to become a full-time writer, and that's what I've been doing ever since. I've since written a total of about 36 novels. I'm working on number 37 right now. I've got an idea for number 38. I've written, I believe, a total of 28 Star Trek novels. I'm working on my 29th.
Wow.
In terms of just full-length novels, I am the third most prolific author of Star Trek novels in the history of the franchise. I am exceeded only by Michael Jan Friedman with 36 and Peter David with 45.
We know Michael, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, but what happened in the last couple of years was
we also co-wrote a comic book series.
Yeah, John and I co-wrote a comic book series in 2001. That also helped sort of get the ball rolling.
Made Dave come the closest to being in federal prison that he ever had.
What happened was the other David Mack had been working, I believe, at the same time for... Actually, you know what it was? It was we sold something, I think, to Jordan Gorfinkel at DC. It was the Batman Chronicles script he bought.
Right.
And they were also hiring the other David Mack to do art at that time. Somebody in their accounting department accidentally put, I believe, my Social Security number on his 1099. Nobody caught it, and I got sued by the IRS for not reporting the artist David Mack's income. Which I really would have liked to have had because he made a lot more than I did. Fortunately, DC took responsibility. They fixed the whole thing, sorted everything with the IRS, so there was no trouble. But ever since then, the other David Mack and I created a gentleman's agreement. If I do anything related to a comic book property, I add my middle name, which is Alan. If he goes near my area of expertise, which is science fiction or television, or feature film, he'll add a middle initial W because I have the David Mack credit locked down with the Writers Guild.
Okay.
So basically, and then the most recent shift in my career status was starting from a couple of years ago. I was hired as a consultant for Star Trek Prodigy, which is the kids show being developed by the Hageman brothers for Nickelodeon. That's hopefully going to premiere either late next year or in 2022. Mm-hmm. And I was a consultant on season 1.
Exceptionally childish. But go on.
And I was a consultant on season 1 of Star Trek Lower Decks.
Right.
So that's sort of been a lot of fun. I'm working on a new Star Trek novel right now. I also had an original series of novels come out from Tor Books over the last few years, the Dark Art series. So I'm trying to get some stuff out there. I'm trying to get some TV properties optioned. I'm always looking for more opportunities to work in TV.
If anybody hearing this has any writing opportunities for Dave that will pay him a lot of money, he's on Facebook. Yeah,
you can find me on Twitter. But I'm hoping that some of my connections at Star Trek may yet pay off. I'm hoping there may be some sort of a staff position. Maybe I can go from consultant to story editor somewhere in the next couple of years.
Well, Lower Decks and Prodigy, I mean, that's the future of Star Trek right there.
I think Prodigy is definitely going to be the future. Mm-hmm. I think Prodigy is going to actually be the show that creates a new generation of Star Trek fans. I think that 50 years from now, when my generation is long gone from this earth, there will be 50-year-old Star Trek fans because of Prodigy. I think Prodigy is going to be the one that gets the credit for why this franchise is going to outlive us all. That's, I think, going to be the stepping in point for the new generation of fans.
Dave, do you really think the way things are going now that people will still have a lifespan of 50 years in the future?
Hey, you never know. They're doing some great work with Cas9 and CRISPR genetic editing. They might fix any number of things. They might make it so we don't need to eat anymore. Or they might change our taste buds so that we actually think jellyfish tastes good, since that'll be the only thing left in the ocean.
Yum.
So maybe they'll help us get over our aversion to eating bugs.
Say more about Prodigy.
I wasn't aware of Prodigy, guys.
It's an animated children's show, and it's going to be on Nickelodeon. It's the only one so far that I'm aware of that's not going to be on CBS All Access. This is the one that Janeway is going to return to be the captain. But I believe it's a show about a few kids who find an old Star Trek ship or something of that nature.
No. I can't actually say anything because of the numerous NDAs, and at this point, I'm pretty sure CBS has a permanent sniper somewhere right over there.
Does it involve a sandwich? Is there a sandwich involved? Because that's
What I can tell you is that you are correct in that Janeway is an element of the series. She is a character. There is a bunch of alien kids. There is an old starship, but the
sounds like she's an admiral then.
The circumstances over how all these elements come together and what it means and what it eventually adds up to, that I can't tell you. I can tell you you're a little off the mark, but I think it's going to prove to be, it's got great heart. I think it's the most Star Trek-y of all of the new Star Trek series I've seen since the team at Secret Hideout took over. It has a remarkable sense of just heart and intelligence, and although it is being called a kid show, I think it'd be more appropriate to call it a family-friendly series. It's something that I think adults who are Star Trek fans will be able to watch with their kids and not feel like their intelligence is being insulted while they're watching it. They're not dumbing it down. Even though it's technically being marketed at the 8 to 13 range, we were talking about things like, well, is this an actually good representation of astrophysical science? Is this actually how a Type 1A supernova would play out? Yada, yada, yada. Like, we were talking about some pretty heady stuff. We were still trying to get the science right.
With Dave, you can trust that he will not do anything to offend an audience. He much prefers to go to each person individually and offend them directly.
Yeah. That's fair.
Interesting.
Any event, working for Prodigy, working with the Hageman brothers has been a great privilege and a lot of fun. And I am very much looking forward to seeing it. Based on the lookbook and the early concept art and some of the animatics I've seen, I think it's going to be one of the most visually arresting Star Trek series you've ever seen. I think it's going to be the best looking Star Trek show that's come out in the history of the franchise. It's
hey,
wow.
Can you put the other David Mack Social Security number on the on your tax form from Lower Deck?
So we've only got a few minutes left here. Let's close the book on Starship down, because this is actually a really good episode, and one that Cirroc, what do you think about it, by the way, overall?
I like this episode. Like I said, there were pairings there that I thought were interesting. I like the fact that Worf stood up and took the control of things, and also the kind of abrasive attitude that he had that his buddy O'Brien felt like needed to be corrected. I really like the interchange between Quark and Hanek. I thought that
Banana Hanek.
Yeah, I thought it was great just to watch them argue their own principles instead of ideals. This is what I'm about, and this is what I'm about. And
so
they
good.
had major conflict, but then at the end, I liked the resolution and the way that they saw each other, for who they were. So I thought that was really good.
Beautiful. By the way, James Cromwell on there. James is actually a friend of mine. We meet in the animal rights circles. We're both big, hardcore animal rights hippies, and he's been amazing for the cause. Great guy. And I just love seeing him in all the various roles. And he's been in a bunch of Star Trek roles, not just this one. It was cool seeing him playing Hanek. It was really good. He's just a great actor.
I have one more trivia bit about this episode,
let's hear it.
About the actual content of the episode. I believe it was the first time it is explicitly stated on screen in a Star Trek episode that there are enlisted personnel in Starfleet. Yeah. It's always been implied, at least since Next Generation, when we have Chief O'Brien. It's implied he's some sort of chief petty officer, although that's never said. Mm-hmm. We don't know if chief is merely an honorary term because he's a transporter chief or whatever. But this is the first time in Star Trek on screen that the words, "these are enlisted men," is used. And it's the first time you get a sense of a broader organization of Starfleet, that there is this upper echelon of officers who we tend to follow. But in any real naval organization, the ratio of officers to enlisted men is about 10 to 1. You get, for every officer, you have 10 enlisted men. And maybe, that includes NCOs, non-commissioned officers, petty officers, chiefs, and warrant officers. So it's interesting that this is the first time in Star Trek that's ever actually said on screen.
Right. That's a great point. I kept thinking, like, when they were talking to them, I kept thinking they were going like, they're just software guys. Leave them alone. They're just software. Cut them some slack, and then they'd start talking like the nerd talk. What about if we do the deflector array? High five, and they get all. I'm like, they are so cute, man. What do you think about the extra actors of the day, Cirroc?
Every time I see an extra actor, I just think, "Oh, you're about to die. You're about to die." So
Munez made it 2 seasons.
Yeah, Munez, man, poor Munez. He didn't make it.
Yeah, he died in the Dominion War, season 6. But Stevens, he lived, made it out of the series, and we actually in the books folded him into the Star Trek Starfleet Corps of Engineers series. We became a series regular in the books, in the SE series that John helped develop.
Stevens did, huh? I didn't know that. That's
Fabian Stevens. We named him Fabian.
I also really like the lady. What was her name in On the Bridge? She also survived.
The helm. The one was at the helm.
Oh
yeah. She was great. She reminded me of Stottie from Voyager.
Remember the character's name.
I'll look right now. Her name was Sarita Carson. Well, they didn't mention it. That's why.
They didn't say her name.
It was Ensign Carson. I had to look it up.
Right.
Yeah. So we have a couple minutes left.
Another thing you could do in a bubble show.
Right.
You can afford to pay some more actors. You can get some more cool special effects out. There was a lot of good special effects outside that was affordable because it was a bubble show.
Mm-hmm.
So with a couple minutes left, what we like to do at the end of every episode is Cirroc, this is his first viewing. So he looks at these through the eyes of a babe. It's like he just soaks it up like a like a brilliant sponge, and he guesses, what did the people give it on IMDb? Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Yes, definitely a good episode. So many good moments in there. I really like the dialogue in this. I'm going to have to say this was about an 8.5.
I had a feeling you'd guess that because this is, in my opinion, a much better episode than what was given on IMDb. I think maybe people don't like the bottle episodes. It was given a 7.8. Personally, from a writing point of view, and I'm not just saying that because these guys are listening in, I'll say it tomorrow too. I honestly think this episode from a writing point of view is a 9. It's a very, I mean, there were 5 storylines. And this is something we've never seen. There was the one main storyline of them going through the gas giant, and that the overarching storyline. And then you had these 4, other stories, like Hannick and Quark. You had Jadzia and Bashir. You had Kira and Sisko. And then in engineering.
We pulled it
out. Photon torpedo stuck on a wall. What more do people want these days?
I loved it.
Yeah.
You got a ticking bomb. I mean, literally, as John likes to point out, if there's no sense of urgency, then what is driving your scene? I mean, you have conflict. There's also got to be time.
Beautiful.
And what's better than this thing could blow at any second?
And in fact, I have found that if people ask me which episode was Starship Down, and I'll say it's the one where they fought in the atmosphere of a gas giant, and they'll say, don't remember it.
Say torpedo.
Say, okay, it's the one with the photon torpedo in the wall. They say, oh, I love that one.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
so
all that writing, and it was just the photon torpedo in the wall.
It was brilliant.
It comes down to that.
We do want to give a very special thanks to Carmen Shamwell, PJ Tomas, TJ Jackson-Bey, Bill Victor, you know where I'm going with this, Cirroc. Arucan, who's waiting, by the way. He's in the waiting room. Yvette Blackmon, Dennis Koch, Homer Frizzell, Eve England, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Titus Mohler, Tim Baum, Rex A. Wood, Robert Weissburg. Thank you all very much to them. We also want to give a huge special thanks to Mr. David Mack and John J. Ordover. Thank you all very much, everybody at home. We'd love to have you back, by the way, guys. You guys were awesome.
Would love to come back.
We'd love to leave our homes.
Great. So we'll, everybody at home, stay tuned for the free-for-all, and we'll be right back on the 7th Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 7th Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Mr. David Mack has been nice enough to stick around for bonus time, who co-wrote this episode. Awesome episode. We're also joined by Bill Victor Arucan, Mr. TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Melissa Longo in space, Yvette Blackmon, Tom, getting ready for her next marathon. We've got Natasha Louise in the mountains of Utah. I don't know what mountain is. We have Katie Carr in the Twitterverse. We have Dr. Anne-Marie Segal and Sue vacationing in Fiji. How's everybody doing? All is well?
Yeah,
Good.
great. I mean, Sue went all the way to Fiji, and all I got was a bottle of water.
Cirroc went to Voss.
No.
Oh, I just got it.
It's not going to work.
Sorry.
That's all right. We'll edit it.
Yeah, we'll start recording now. Before we get into any dumb questions that I may or may not have, do you guys want to talk about this episode? Do you have any questions at all about it? It's a really awesome episode. One of my favorites when I first watched it.
My question is, why did they dress him like he's wearing drapes?
Who's that? Hannick?
James Bond. It looks like he's wearing drapes. Why? I mean, the face was amazing, but his clothes.
Well, Cirroc is our wardrobe expert generally. So, did you notice?
Bus seat covers. and casino carpets. But the drapes, yes, there was a little bit of drape action. I did notice that.
Drape action.
But I thought the actor was pretty good. I thought he was a good challenge for Quark, you know.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about clothes. What about Quark's pajamas? They were kind of funky. Those are the ugliest pajamas I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, Quark dresses to me like the ringleader at the circus. You know, the master of ceremony.
Well, it kind of is.
Yeah.
Complete opposite for what he wears in the bar from what he wears.
He's usually pretty snazzy.
He is.
Yeah, usually.
And somehow he knows how to defuse bombs.
The lock.
Yeah.
Just like magically pulls the pin.
Well, you know what they say, the riskier the road, the greater the profit.
The reward.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
There it is.
So
it didn't surprise me that he knew how to do that. I mean, he is a
Greater
friend.
odds at
And he's
winning Davo.
He knows how to do a lot of stuff.
So I remember when this episode first aired, and I enjoyed it so much because, you know, we're starting to get a taste of the Dominion. And so we meet these Carmen people that we've never seen before, and we get to fight with the Jem'Hadar for a little bit. So and from the first time it aired, I thought it was super interesting, and to be able to see some Dominion action going on, because, you know, at that time it was still like this big mysterious thing, like, what is this Dominion? They've blown up a Galaxy class starship, and now we're doing the Federation thing and trying to do some trading, but it's all backdoor. This is exciting. So
yeah.
And who put Quark in charge of the trading for the Federation? And didn't check in what he was up to. Great.
Yeah, that was hilarious, that the way that he was skimming them, making up stuff and blaming it on the Federation. Because he knows any better.
The justification for using Quark was plausible deniability. If Quark is the one doing the negotiating, they can claim that, you know, Karma can say, well, we weren't negotiating with the Federation. We were talking to an independent agent.
Exactly.
It was all about political deniability.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Quark was a great salesman. He could sell any deal.
Yeah, and he's also an expert at knowing when the other guy's trying to screw you on the contract.
Yeah.
Hey, David, do you have a favorite Deep Space Nine character to write for? Was there one that you just always were really excited to write for, or did you just figure they were all the same, all great, all fun?
I loved everything about the series when it was first on the air and back when I was pitching it. In the years after the show has left the air and since I began writing novels, I've developed an affinity for writing stories about Julian Bashir.
Oh,
wow! It's hard to say why, but I found something very relatable about Bashir. I've written several novels that have Bashir as the main focus character. Especially, let's see, my book's A Ceremony of Losses. I did a couple of Section 31 novels called Disavowed and Control, all of which feature Bashir very prominently. Also another Section 31 related novel called Zero Sum Game, in which he sort of gets a chance to really become the spy, the Starfleet intelligence operative that he's always wanted to be, and then he finds out it's really a bloody, ugly business that morally compromises him and forces him to reassess who he is and what he wants to be. And I also put him back together with Serena Douglas in the books. So I had a lot of fun writing Bashir. I found him very relatable, especially as the books developed a post-finale storyline beyond the end of the show, and characters began to move on. Sisko, although he returns from the Prophets eventually in the books, doesn't come back to the station. He does something else. Kira becomes a Vedic eventually, leaves the station. Everybody leaves the station, and at one point I realized the only original left was Bashir. And at that point in my life, I was sort of dealing with the fact that a lot of my friends had moved away, a lot of college friends had left town. And so I was able to sort of relate to the idea of Bashir, feeling like everybody I know has moved on, has done something new with their life, and I'm sitting in the same place I was 12 years ago. Why am I still sitting here? What am I doing here? And it was basically about a guy sort of realizing I'm not living up to my potential. I'm not living the life I could be living. And then he finds out that, maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all. But I really have learned to love writing for Bashir.
Did anybody notice that he said one of the books he wrote was called Control?
Yes.
I'm like, I immediately started thinking, wait a minute, is there a connection there? Did Section 31 have to do with Control and Discovery?
Yeah, in fact, the premise of Control, which was published in March of 2017, and it's alluded to in Disavowed, which was published in 2014 or 2015, is that there's an entity known as Control that is this shadowy entity that nobody ever sees the real face of, and it runs Section 31. And what's revealed in Control is that Control is actually a hyper-sophisticated artificial intelligence. It's about 200 years old. It's been around since pretty much the founding of the Federation. It's part of what was responsible for the founding of the Federation, and you find out that it is in everything. It has infested the control code for everything you can think of: communication systems, traffic systems, replicators, comms, starships, everything. It's everywhere. It's in every piece of technology you use, and it's basically this epistemological, mind fuck. Sorry for the New York speak there. For Bashir, he realizes my universe, everything I've thought I believed in about the Federation is wrong. That there's actually this sort of malevolent, autonomous entity at the center of it all that's actually calling the shots, and the rest of us are just kind of being used as meat puppets. The whole premise of Control, being able to reprogram people's minds, seizing, control of the Federation through the Internet of Things, let's say, the fact that it's a distributed artificial intelligence that exists across faster than light communication networks makes it a very difficult opponent to try and get ahead of. It's usually about 50 million moves ahead of you. That was something that I did in the books. And then when Discovery's Writers' Room was looking for directions on season 2, it was something that Kirsten Beyer sort of brought to their attention. She said, well, in the books with Section 31, we did this and this and this. And I think she just meant for it to be, demonstrative, and they took that as, oh, well, we can do that. And thus they did their own version of Control in Discovery.
By the way, you don't have to apologize for saying fuck, but you do have to apologize for saying epistemology or whatever that word was.
Epistemological.
that one gave me a headache.
Sorry, I find that that's the perfect word to describe what has to be the crisis at the heart of any great thriller. Is something about the main character discovering that the world does not work the way they thought it worked. That's pretty much always what's at the heart of a thriller. Is you realize that the status quo is a lie, or that there's some great lie underpinning the status quo, and that you must find a way to challenge the lie and expose the lie. And the word for that, of course, when you boil it all down, is that fancy $1.50 word.
Epidemiology, yes.
Epistemological.
Okay. Yeah.
You missed a couple syllables in there.
I'll ask Sue Gruner about it afterwards. But I have a question for you. David, so if you write something in a novel, and later on the TV shows steal something, a concept from your novel.
Technically, they can't steal it. They own it.
They own it.
Wow. So you don't get writing credits. You don't get any.
And I knew that when I signed the contract. It's in the contracts that tie-in writers sign when we write the books. We acknowledge that what we are creating is a work for hire, that the copyright on all material that we develop during the course of story development, everything we develop in the manuscript, is owned by Star Trek, the entity, the corporate entity of Star Trek. They own it. And they can repurpose it, they can use it, they can be used in other Star Trek books, other Star Trek derivative works. It can also be superseded. by canon at any time, but they own it. And the contract also specifies, things like I get paid this much, I'm entitled to the following royalties under the following conditions, I'm entitled to credit in the following manner. So it's all pretty much laid out. And then what happens is that if the shows find something in the books that they really like and they want to bring it forward into the show or adapt it in some way and change it for the show, they're perfectly within their rights to do so. And they don't have to credit the writer of the original material, and they don't have to pay the writer of the original material, because Star Trek owns the property. That's how it was set up, which is very different from how Doctor Who works, because that's covered under British copyright law. Writers of Doctor Who, both episodes and in many cases the novels, at least before like the last 10 years, retained many of the rights to the things they created that were original to their stories, and were entitled to credit or compensation if another writer or if the show wanted to repurpose those elements. There's a reason why the Terry Nation estate gets paid every time they use the Daleks. But that's because that's British law. British law is very different from American copyright law.
Okay.
Do any of you have any questions before I change the subject a little bit?
Well, I wanted to compliment David on the episode. I love that there was like 4 different stories that I was tracking through.
Yes.
We had On the Bridge, Sisko, and Kira, and she was like going through like we never do anything outside of work type of scenario.
Yeah.
And in engineering, you had Worf and working with the engineers, and he was trying to figure out how to work with the engineers. And then we know Dax and Julian. I thought, oh, is this the relationship that's going to happen?
I think, as we said during the main part of the interview, I call that pulling an Irwin Allen, where you've got people locked in various rooms during a disaster, and so you're able to create all these little parallel stories within the context of one overarching event. As opposed to the Ocean's 11 version of the Irwin Allen, which is we fake a disaster.
And also, then lastly, I just love the Ferengi one with Quark and Honik. I thought like it was two greedy people fighting over something. Like, oh my God, who's gonna win? And
I love the whole bit. My favorite bit in that whole exchange is when they're arguing over the torpedo, and the concept of ethics in business. And I believe it's Quark who points out to Hanak, after Hanak admits that his people sell these munitions to the Jem'Hadar, and Quark points out, wasn't this thing supposed to go off on impact?
Yeah.
And Hanak looks at it and he goes, maybe I should offer them a refund.
That was
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
My favorite
That
part.
was my favorite line, yeah.
They just both break up over it. Because really, when you're in that kind of life or death stress, you tend to go to hysterics. You break up because it's so terrifying. All you can do is just laugh. So,
Natasha, you said that's your favorite too?
Yeah, it was so fun because they are so terribly greedy and kind of maniacal in the way that they do business, but they just sort of have a fun laugh about the fact that they're about to die, but they're just like, hey,
the wrong one.
Let's throw our hands up and say, hey, it's 2020. Let's have some fun.
By the way, hello to Homer Frizzell, Commander Homer Frizzell. What's up?
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
Also a New Yorker. We're talking with David Mack, who co-wrote this episode.
Hey, David.
As well
good to see you.
About, I think, 940 books, Star Trek books.
He's got a lot of books out there for sure. I hope you guys have
Trek
Well,
books.
no, I don't know how many.
Yeah.
And I'm working on number 29 right now.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Man.
That's
And
incredible.
is it Picard Discovery? Like, what's the book you're working on
Can't
now?
say.
Could you talk about the series?
Nope. I have to wait for the publisher.
Oh, that's great.
Ooh,
So I gotta wait for
a
the
can't
publisher.
say book. Those are the most exciting ones.
I love them.
Can't even say series.
Can't even say. I can't tell you the working title. I can't tell you what it's part of.
He can't tell us what the new Star Trek Prodigy is all about, though, in detail.
I can give you vague ideas, but I have to keep a lot of those. I have to keep a lot of that in my head too.
So is
for
it
those of
Captain
you-
Janeway or Admiral Janeway?
Can't say.
You better not say a word about it.
Come on, Prodigy
Can
has
neither
to be
confirm
captain.
nor deny.
It's captain. Come on.
He's got a couple of consultant credits for Prodigy and for Lower Decks. That's why we're prodding him about it. And he's being tough, though. He's doing a great job.
I wasn't prodding. I didn't mean to be David. I wasn't prodding. Just so you know, that's Ryan.
Don't.
I do have a question for David, if I can ask a question. I have a friend in Germany, and I think she just got done reading Destiny. And I wanted to ask, what was your favorite storyline you wrote in Destiny?
It's got to be, for me, the Erica Hernandez storyline in book 2 during her period of prolonged captivity with the Kaliar. What I love about that storyline is you have these 4 women who are the only survivors of the Columbia. You have Captain Hernandez, you have Victoria Fletcher, who's her XO, you've got, what's her name? Basically, you got the communications officer, and then you've got the medical officer, Metzger. And they basically all react in their own different ways over the periods of decades of basically being held prisoner in this city that's basically flying through deep space for decades and decades. And I think it's Cedra Valerian is the communications officer. I believe she commits, she drowns herself or something. I think Metzger throws herself off a tower. Fletcher develops cancer, chooses to forgo treatment. And in the end, it's interesting in that, you've got this whole thing where the thing that screws up Cedra Valerian is, I guess, she's afflicted with something, and they try to save her by doing a merger with the Kaliar, and it just basically kills her. And this is something that, Hernandez feels guilty about for decades, but it's also the same process that later on she undergoes when she's near death. And it turns out the reason it didn't work for Valerian is Valerian fought it. Valerian didn't want it, so it basically malfunctioned. And so in that moment, Hernandez has to undergo a moment of surrender. She has to surrender herself to the process. In a way, it's like giving up a bit of autonomy, giving up a bit of free will. And her whole storyline for Hernandez, especially in book 2, is about transformation. It's about apotheosis. And the whole book is about the way that we all become our own prisons. We all imprison ourselves spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And for her, that becomes true both in her physical circumstance, but also her psychological circumstance. But in the course of the book, she is changed. She becomes something more than human. And there's very much a Christ metaphor going on with Hernandez. And then it comes full circle in book 3, where she is transformed in book 2. And in book 3, it's her role to act as the bridge, the sacrifice that transforms the Borg and rescues them. So she, in effect, becomes the savior. She is the Messiah to the Borg. So Hernandez's storyline through all 3 books is basically my favorite part of the whole thing. What a lot of people don't seem to grasp is that it's really, the trilogy is her story. The trilogy is really about Hernandez. Our other characters are along for the ride. They are witnesses to history. Erica Hernandez is history. It is her trilogy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don't we love having David Mack on? We're gonna ask him to come back next week and the week after.
People will get sick of me real quick, dude.
Man.
What you said made me think of something that was in this episode in Starship's Down. It was the moment when Kira runs out of options. She feels like she can't say anything else to Sisko. She's like, and then she finally says, I just got to pray. That's the only thing I know what to do. And I just thought it was interesting because it was the first time I can remember somebody resorting to prayer as an option in Star Trek that I've watched so far.
Yeah, one of the things I always really liked about DS9, even though myself, personally, I'm an agnostic, verging on atheist, is that I loved the respectful way in which DS9, through the Bajorans, was able to examine questions of faith in a non-condescending manner. It was able to say there are toxic manifestations of faith, but there are also life-affirming manifestations of faith, that faith in and of itself is neither a good thing nor a bad thing, but does it lead you to lead a better life, or does it lead you to harm life? And so I love the fact that DS9 had a very thoughtful approach to the depiction of religion and its role in life.
On Hamara, no less. I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. But yeah, Hamara was whatever it was. They said it was the anniversary of the day that the emissary came, and poor Sisko's like, I don't want. Yeah,
there's a festival, and there's lights, and there's going to be a feast. And
we fast first. Yeah, that's a big old thing.
The Bajoran version of Lent.
Yeah. Exactly. I actually thought for a minute there that when she was praying that Sisko was going to see the prophets at some point, and I thought they were going to interrupt. I don't know if anybody else felt that way.
Actually, it was the first time where I started thinking, wait a minute, because I'm always of the opinion that they're wormhole aliens and it's all kind of nonsense. But then today, I totally had the same feeling where I was like, you know what happens in the episode, but wait, is he actually the emissary? Maybe they are right to do this festival. Like, he kind of is.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I really like just that whole scene where Kira's talking to him about the 4 shifts or whatever. And then she's like, what do we usually talk about? And he says, we talk about work.
I think, again, to recap something that we covered in the main interview, is that what I love about the ending of the episode is the rather sort of uplifting tone of it, the brightness of it after such a dark episode, where you've got Kira with her baseball cap that he tosses to her.
Loved it.
You know, she smiles at him, and then he sort of just kicks back, and he's got his baseball and a big smile on his face. And it's like, not many DS9 episodes end on that kind of a happy note. And I've always loved that about this episode. I'm glad that they let us put that in and that they kept it.
It was good levity.
I feel like that was the first big happy smile we get out of Kira.
Yeah.
She does it a little bit more later on in the seasons, but I feel like that's the first big one that we get. And it was just, I actually rewound it to watch it again, where she puts the hat on and she has a big smile. It's like, what a great moment.
Back in around 2000.
Really liked where Kira, he asks her to tell the story.
Oh, yeah.
Again.
He says, tell me a story.
Right. Yeah.
Just tell me a story. Don't talk about work. How does the story end? What happened with the story? I really love
brothers.
that.
Oh, he goes home to his family, and he goes, "That's good."
I really love the fact that he was actually really listening, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" And then she was like, "Oh, yeah, the story I was telling you. I forgot about that. I was telling you a story."
In 2006, I wrote a novel called Warpath, where I actually did a callback scene to that moment in Starship Down, where the roles are reversed. It's Kira has been mortally wounded, and she's basically clinging to life in the DS9 infirmary, and Sisko, who is not currently serving on the station, but by that point in the narrative has returned from his time with the prophets, as the emissary. He kind of comes in with like the whole Jedi robes sort of a thing, like the desert prophet, comes into the infirmary, and he sits down, and he basically is telling her a story. And I believe I have Quark ask about it, and he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm telling her a story because she once did this for me.
Wow, really?
Wow.
That's so cool.
That's cool.
Wow.
It's very wonderful.
I just want to say the other thing that happened, which helped to diffuse, like we were in this high pressure, like what the heck is going on? And then it was like this Worf was talking about like a debrief, kind of like a captain's log or a commander's log.
Right.
And then we segued into the rest of it. And I don't know as I've seen that before, certainly not on Deep Space Nine, but we had that. So it's like, and then we got like, that was going on as Dax and Bashir, like the door was being opened to let them out of that section that they were in.
Yeah.
It was also an interesting method to have Worf doing the log as well, rather than normally would be the captain.
Yeah.
But that's because he was the one that opened the episode doing his log. I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
It was the Defiant log.
Right.
Yep.
And that was another reason I always thought this episode was interesting, because going forward, we begin to see Worf, taking a lot of duties. And we even saw it in Rejoined, having duties with the Defiant and commanding the Defiant almost like it was his ship at some points. And we know in First Contact, he was the one that took the Defiant to go fight the Borg,
Tough little
and
ship.
to get upset when someone called it small. And
I believe it was Riker who made that mistake.
I always thought that was an interesting dynamic in DS9 as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things they establish in season 4 is that Worf is living on the Defiant. He doesn't live on the station. He's taking a stateroom on the ship.
Yeah, I just saw that episode recently when he moved. He was tired of the noise.
Is that season 4 or does that happen later?
It's early. I think it's early.
I think it happens a little bit later. It hasn't happened yet.
Because I think later he does move on to the station, but at first he finds the station inhospitable.
Yeah, I think he prefers the uncomfortable beds that are on the Defiant to the comfiness of Deep Space Nine.
It might have been Bar Association.
When it happens.
Yeah.
Might have been, because I saw that one recent. Might have been that one. I could be wrong though, but I'll have to look it up. But
I don't know.
That.
I think it's coming.
Speaking of which, and by speaking of which, I mean this is something that just popped in my head. Melissa, you just finished watching Enterprise for the first time.
Yeah.
Right? You just finished like a day or two ago, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. Yeah, just finished watching it. Finally.
Well, this is it. What do you think? It's better than you thought, huh?
Oh, yeah. It's much better than I thought it was going to be. I hear so much flack about Enterprise, and my expectations were a lot lower. And honestly, but then watching it, I was like, what is everybody crying about?
It's the theme song.
Exactly.
The theme song and the last episode.
Yeah, the theme song and the last episode.
The last episode, I feel it was misplaced. It didn't feel like a last episode to me. It kind of took the focus away from Enterprise and the people on Enterprise and put it in where, with TNG.
Yeah, but more people we care about.
But you do end up caring about the people.
Yeah.
So I feel like it was unneeded. It was unnecessary, and it did a disservice to the people on Enterprise. So and I can see why people would be disappointed by the last episode.
Melissa, what did you think of like the last scene, like the final scene? Because that's one of my favorite moments in Trek history.
I did like that. I did like that Archer was the one who
earmuffs Cirroc.
You wanna watch it?
No. I'm not listening.
We'll get to this in
2029.
I did like that. Yeah.
David, have you written Enterprise novels?
Not specifically for Enterprise, but Destiny, because it used Erica Hernandez. She's a canon character from Enterprise. I made reference to some of the canon events that she's involved in. And as she has her long sort of running ordeal over which she survives several centuries with a prolonged lifespan and goes into the past and then survives back into the present, we touch upon, things like the Romulan War, the fact that she wishes she could get in touch with Archer. So I did some work in the Enterprise era with those sort of characters, but I haven't actually written a novel for the Star Trek Enterprise franchise specifically.
Now, we only have a couple minutes left because I know Cirroc has a big date with Lambda Quadrant's HoloCon pretty soon, very soon. But very quickly, Mr. Bill Victor Arucan, can you tell us about the movie you just shot for 12 days that I think you just got back today, right? You just finished yesterday?
Last night.
Wow.
So my film is called film's called Alien Danger with Raven Van Slender, and it's a sci-fi family film. And I got Ryan and Cirroc to actually be in the film, so that was kind of cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What did we play? Did we play an interesting alien or?
You guys played yourselves as a seventh rule. You were reviewing the movie.
Yeah, awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. That was a great
You guys
time.
went over the top. You guys did a fantastic job.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having us too, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for
Sets were great. Amazing sets. Really a
Were
lot
they?
of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, the locations, I should say. Yeah.
I've never been to that. Was it California Abnormal of Arts? That was really cool.
That's
That
great.
Yeah, it
looked
was-
like a really nice place from the pictures that I saw.
Yeah.
And you got your seventh rule shirt on, Bill. I want to highlight that for a second.
Yeah.
Boom. I like that color combo, the gray.
Thank you.
Looks
And
amazing.
Sue Gruner has a shirt on that.
Yes,
Pretty cool.
from the shops at Risa.
Oh,
right?
let's see it.
From Virtual TrekCon 2.
Oh, nice. Nice. Solid.
Very
That is
nice, very nice.
awesome.
Frequency. Who's this?
Who dis?
Oh, who dis?
And Homer's got a nice Be Kind shirt. Always great.
Always
I have a jetpack.
Okay, so since we're doing a show and tell, my husband wants to show Cirroc his car.
Oh, let's do it.
Okay.
Whoa.
Well, everybody.
Should we leave?
Would you guys like to see the car?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Cirroc,
you gonna
it's
drive it right
especially
into the
for
living
you.
room? Sure.
No. Yeah, we're
Now, her husband, Alex, always cosplays as Geordi on Deep Space Nine. He does a great job. It's really cool.
Oh, Alex, show your face, honey.
Oh, hi.
Show your face. Oh.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
Hey,
What's up, Alex?
just wanted to, since this was a defined episode.
Look at that beast.
Oh my
What are we
gosh.
doing
Sweet.
Nice.
Wait.
Oh,
Hang on.
wow.
Let me
Our
spotlight
beautiful
this.
girl. We bring her to Vegas every year.
Nice.
Oh,
Wait,
fine. Okay,
Show
I
it,
see
show it a
now.
little bit longer. I just spotlighted it. Show the front.
Wait.
Oh, sure.
Hang on, babe. Yeah, you gotta do it. Sorry. He's the tech babble.
He's an
Oh my
engineer.
goodness.
Look at this.
Oh god.
Nice. That's cool.
First, a little define on the dashboard there.
Nice.
Ah,
Very
Oh my gosh.
that is awesome.
That's sweet.
That's awesome.
I think the bar has been raised very high.
The Bar Association has been raised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh sakes.
That makes my T-shirt look really simple now.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Melissa won't let me paint the wall.
We live in the mountains. Woo, it's freezing.
That's awesome.
That's really sweet.
That's a
Great
great
job.
car.
All right. Before we go, anybody have any final thoughts or any final words to throw David's way?
Ryan, I did cheat and look up the episode when Worf moves. It is
Oh,
Bar
good. What is it?
Association, season 4, episode 16.
And is it Bar
Okay,
Association?
so shortly.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Cool.
I got a favorite Worf moment coming up, so when that happens, I'll be sure to.
Oh, me too. I can't wait to see if it's our favorite. If we have the same favorite.
I do have one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When all of you were watching this, did you not think of Zephyrin Cochran when you were watching it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
James
couldn't get
Cromwell.
past it.
Yeah.
He also plays like one of the big fish head aliens in Next Generation, and he played another one with like a mustache.
Yeah.
In Next
He's
Generation as
played
well.
several, yeah.
Somebody's echo.
And I heard that actually he and Armin Shimmerman are really good friends in real life, which is when the second they put the cameras on them, they really sparkled. And
Oh, that's cute.
so like Memory Alpha,
They were
everybody
so-
says it really shows through.
Yeah. They were so great. That was such a nice scene with those guys there and the torpedo that was lodged in the hull.
So memorable.
Yeah. It's crazy because to think that if Quark makes the wrong decision in that one moment, the whole ship blows up and everybody dies.
Show's
Right,
over.
yeah,
It's
not
the
just
Michael
the
Eddington
Show is
show.
over.
He's a gambler.
Then the show is about Michael Eddington and Odo.
It already is for you. You don't stop
Exactly.
talking
Marley.
Now, that would have been a bold storytelling choice.
Yeah.
It would have certainly been. Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, I guess we better run. We do want to thank everybody for joining us at home. We want to thank Mr. Bill Victor Arucan. Where can we find Alien Danger? Should we just look it up on social media?
It's on social media on Facebook under Alien Danger with Raven Van Slender.
Got it. Lots of cool stuff.
I got one thing. All right. Chat pack. In the comments below, put your favorite David Mack novel.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Got a shirt. Chat pack shirt.
Hashtag.
Oh, wait. Show us the shirt, Anne-Marie.
Oh, this is my chat pack shirt. It's not like focusing well, but
That's J.R. Poole that designed that for us.
Mhm.
Shout out to J.R. Poole, who
He does
was
good
nice
stuff.
enough to send us something again because the post office sent it back for some reason.
bad.
Anyway, so he's sending it again for you, Cirroc. He's a very, very devoted sender. Thanks, J.R. Poole.
Thanks, JR.
And thank you, TJ. Thank you, Melissa, Yvette, Natasha, welcome, Katie, Anne Marie, Sue, Homer, and a very special thanks to David Mack and David Mack's kitty.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Really
guys.
appreciate it.
Had a lot of fun hanging out and chatting with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks.
We got to do it. It's only a paper moon coming up.
I'm looking forward to it.
Sooner than that. That's like a year and a half from now.
Sooner than that. Sorry.
We're like, can't wait to see you in 2 years.
I didn't know what
No, David, you should be on more often and just say, I would have done this.
I'm not
That
going
would be great.
Nobody likes that.
No. Okay. Yeah. Okay, never mind.
All right.
Homer Frizzell, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Homer Frizzell, who has all the bad ideas.
Debated all four sides of his own argument and then gave up.
And then realized, nope. Damn.
That's what happens when your name
That is
sounds
a
like a
model of
baseball
efficiency.
player.
Yep, and nope in the same sentence. Gotta love it.
All right. Thank you all very much at home. We'll see you next time. And always remember the seventh rule.
Hit that like button.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Who was it that said the coolest quote of the week in the chat pack? She said, oh, God, I can't remember. She said, victory is like.
I think that's Medallion.
Medallion, yeah.
Yeah.
Victory is like.
Smash the like button.
Smash the like button. That's brilliant. Love it. Okay, now remember the seventh rule.
Smash it like a Jim Hadar.